Our elders are a source of wisdom, and the Proverbs tell us that the words of the mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a gushing stream. We are deeply blessed in the church with leaders who have been servants in the church. And these servants are warehouses of stories and experiences that reveal wisdom to us like a gushing stream. This year, because of COVID, we have not gathered our retired leaders together, but we asked those who have served for 50 years in the church to come and record some experiences for us, that we might garner some of their wisdom. Now, we asked them some specific questions, and they gave us wonderful insights into their time in ministry. I hope that you enjoy these reflections as much as I have. The writer Andrew Solomon said, "While old people have been young, no young people have ever been old." And this troubling fact engenders the frustration of all parents and elders, which is, while you can describe your experience, you cannot confer it. We give thanks to these saints who took time to describe their experiences.
Hello, my name is Pastor Ed Reed. I'm married to my wife Marilyn of 53 years. I have 2 children adopted from Korea, and I have 1 grandchild, a girl by the name of Madeline. She's the sweet part of our life right now. In my first parish experience that I had at Hamath Theological Seminary, my integrity as a future pastor was challenged by a Baptist salesman who made a flash assessment about me when he said, "Some were called, some were sent, but you packed up and just went." I believe now, 54 years later, that I have been all 3. My faith journey began when I was an asthmatic child and prayed for by Pastor Hoffert. Every pastor serving my congregational roots has influenced me in every respect of my ministry. Pastor Pretz, Cafteen, Huber, and First were very influential in my formative years. It was my brother, Pastor Raymond Reed, who facilitated and encouraged my entrance into Muhlenberg College and Hamath Seminary. He was 16 years older than me, so when I would visit him for vacation Bible school in his parishes, I got a bird's eye view of what it was like to be a pastor. I would be thoughtless if I did not recognize my mother, Stella, who faithfully participated in my home church and encouraged my participation. I would also be remiss if I did not include my wife, Marilyn, whom has supported me and ministered with me for 53 years. I think sometimes it's tough to wrap our heads around the word call. How do we know what we are called? It is not like having our phone ring or having someone shout directions to us across the room. How do we know it's not just some crazy cockamamie scheme that pops into our head, or something that someone else thinks is dumb? Call is never an easy once-and-done cut and dried business. It requires discernment. It challenges us to look at the world and ourselves differently. Call demands that we are taking a risk, sometimes a really big risk. Call may ask us to change or try something we've never done before, or learn, or to jump into the deep end of the pool without a life preserver. How do we do it? We do it by joining others. God places us in a community so that we have others to lean on, and so that we allow others to lean on us. We discover companions who have made the same ideas and visions, and some may be quite different, but just as exciting. We work together, we rejoice together when those joys happen, and we pull together when call becomes challenging. That's what it is to be the church. We are a gathering of ordinary people who rejoice that we have been filled with extraordinary gifts from God, and then work together to share those gifts around the world. I believe one of the most formative experiences for me and Paul in the ministry was when my congregation at Salem Lutheran Church in Dover took on the task, a 3-year program called Transformation Ministry. It was a process. It was a wonderful and exciting time for me to see the members of that congregation take ownership of their own talents and be called in the ministry of the congregation. They were empowered to step up and embrace their role in Christ's ministry to the world. Members who had not taken leadership roles embraced a newfound call. It was an exciting time. It was a time when everyone seemed to be working together. One of the things I would tell myself about ministry is that you will never know how you affect other people in your ministry moment. You may see it years later when they tell you about it, or not. In the end, your call is to plant the seed and to turn them over to the counsel of the Holy Spirit. One such example is that of a young lady who I had in my confirmation classes. She, at the time, had been abused by her father, not physically, but verbally. She was beaten down. But she became married, moved to Australia, and in conversations with her through email and through Facebook, we discovered that that's what happened to her. And she thanked me and my wife for giving her the ability to see her way through it and to feel worthy and trustworthy as a person of God and a child of God whom she never forgot. I want to thank the Synod for giving me this opportunity to be able to tell my story, and I appreciate the things that they're able to do for me, and we certainly are glad that we're part of this ministry and still working that way through my ability to serve congregations by being a supply pastor on a Sunday. Thanks again for this opportunity.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hal Fox. I'm an old man now. I've discovered that people notice me as an old man because people open doors for me. So I must admit that. The funny part about it is one of the biggest parts that made my ministry perhaps a little different was all my youth ministry work. I started as an assistant pastor, and at that time, I was also to run the youth group, which I did, at the same church where my friend Kellen is at this very time. I loved it. I was in youth ministry all my life, even as I got older. Of course, some of my men and women friends say, Hal, that's because that's about where chronologically your head is. You're really not a grown-up. One of the funniest things that ever happened in regard to that was because for years I was honored at being a pastor, a chaplain, if you will, for the pages at convention, and I was a chaperone with several other men and women for the pages at convention. And I guess I got sort of a reputation as being the one who wears the shorts and looks like a little kid. So at one time they were discussing something really important for the business of the church, including the budget for youth ministry of the Synod. And I had a comment to make, and I went up, as we do, I should say, at all our conventions, our assemblies. I went up to the microphone, and Guy Edmiston was then the bishop. And as I approached the microphone as I was recognized to speak next, Guy said, to 1,000 people, I think, here comes the oldest teenager in the Synod. Well, you know what? That was probably my biggest day in my whole life. I mean, everybody had a good laugh, perhaps at my expense or because of me, but I also thought, what a fun thing for him to do. I thought it was really cool. In ministry, I think one thing I would really want to share with all my men and women friends who are yet to be ordained and feel the call to be a pastor. I really think we have to remember the church is a place of all ages It's not just ministry for the young people or the little kids or the adults. It's for everyone. The other thing I think is so very, very important, and this makes me an old pastor. I have, in fact, sometimes been critical of younger pastors. Perhaps I'm wrong. But part of my ministry was always visiting people, be they in the hospital, in a nursing home, or in their own home. And it's very important, and I learned this stupidly twice. Don't ever pick someone out as your favorite family, because many families want to be that to you. You be a pastor to all the people, young and old, rich and poor, ethnicity, different, whatever. You're the pastor of the whole congregation. Do that, and you will be loved, I think. And people will love you for being part of their life through some very sad times and some wonderful times as well. My friend Charlie Roberts, who is with student ministry, young people's ministry for our synod, he and I used to have retreats together of our youth groups that we led at that time. And in the Lutheran Church, we make a big emphasis on our Holy Communion and Holy Baptism, how important that is, and indeed it is. Perhaps one of the most touching and memorable moments of my whole life was we reached out as a youth group to a young woman who had some real problems and suffered from some depression, a family that really didn't appreciate her very much, and the family of the youth group became hers. Well, she was a little older than most of my other teenagers in the youth group, but she asked, was it okay if she could go along to the retreat? And I said, certainly, you come to all the youth group meetings, you would enjoy it. And we rendezvoused with Charlie's youth group, and we were at Ocean City, Maryland. And we were about finishing up our morning worship, talking about what we'd be doing that evening, and this young woman came to us and said, you know, Pastor Fox, I've never been baptized. And Charlie and I thought, well, why not? We're at the ocean. Wouldn't this be a wonderful example for all the kids to see and witness and be part of, and it meant so much to her. So we called up her parents, long distance, asked if this was okay with them. It was. They had no problem at all. They had nothing to do with the church at all, but at least they did not stand in the way of their daughters asking to be baptized. I will never forget also that night, our youth group of about 20-some young people was joined by 10 or 15 other young folks who were at the shore with their families or with just by themselves with their friends. They joined in our worship as we baptized this young woman. What a day in my life it was. That's baptism, a young woman choosing to be baptized and becoming a member of the church. What a high. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
I'm Reverend Michael Brundle, and I was born in Hanover, raised in New Oxford. I served in Clearfield County in Mountain View Parish for about 8.5 years, and moved to Mercersburg, where I was there for over 28 years. And my key moment in my ministry, I think, was the 1989 Synod Convention in Gettysburg. I had started, a couple of us in our parish had started a bell choir for mentally and physically disabled people, and we were there, and it was going along, but not really. And Reverend Bishop Edmondson invited the choir to play at the Synod Convention in a worship service. So we did that, and we played 3 songs, and the last one was Jesus Loves Me, and I remember that, and the whole crowd just raised and applauded and everything. Even Dr. Needing, who was opposed to clapping in church during service, got up off his rear end and, clapped. And so I thought that was a movement of the Spirit, it gave the choir confidence, gave the choir director confidence. And we went out and we had just invited a few friends. There was only 8 in the choir. And we started inviting everybody that we could talk to. And it wound up with 23 in the choir. We needed more helpers. We went from 2 to 6 helpers. We had people from, we're in Mercersburg. We had people from McConnellsburg, Hagerstown, Chambersburg, and Greencastle in it. And what we did was we made them human. They talked about their sports. They talked about their boyfriends and girlfriends, their work. And then we went to the public schools, having a campaign against the R word. We contacted colleges. We decided maybe we could inspire other people to start choirs like this. So we went to their education departments and their music departments and arranged for us to show up on campus, give them a concert, then tell them how we did notation for people who do not know how to read music and stuff like that. So that was my magical moment, I'd say, in my ministry. What I would tell myself, my younger self, I would tell my younger self to take the sacraments more seriously and don't have them just in the 4 walls. I had a woman who was Lutheran who was married to a Church of God husband, and she called me up one day and said, my husband will agree to baptize the kids in the Lutheran church if we don't do it in the church building. I said, okay. So I went to his house, all in clerics and everything like that, expecting to do a kitchen table or a sink baptism or something like that. No, he wanted it done in a pond like Jesus was done. And I says, no, Jesus was done in a river, not in a pond. And I said, the oldest picture we have of Jesus is being poured. He said, there's a creek up the way. This was November in Clearfield County. So I went up, I said, okay, rolled up my pants, got into the creek. The kids were, oh, it's too bumpy, it's too bumpy. Mother came over with a huge flat rock, dropped it right in front of me. I was wet from head to toe. And then we baptized the kids. And about 26 years later, one of the kids called me up from outside State College. Reverend Brundle, would you come over and baptize my 2-year-old? I said, remember when you're baptizing? Yes, I know. That's what I want. She said, we have a creek out back. My husband built a little place of cement and sand for you to stand in. The kid can sit down. I said, yes, if you're going to church and I have permission of your pastor. And she said, yes. And when I got there's a huge tent. I saw the family, friends, everybody. It was a time to witness what baptism meant to our faith. So that's a sacrament outside of the 4 walls. And I've done I did ponds, I've done swimming pools, and so on like that, and semi-public times. Also with sacrament of communion, we're in prisons, we're in nursing homes, and that's a time to sort of feel them out. You have people in the inside, and you can connect with people who are for reform of nursing homes and prisons and so like that. So attaching justice to your sacraments, I think, is a good idea. And speaking of that, liturgy is the best thing to do. We have this liturgy where we have confirmation with a promise of striving for peace and justice throughout the world, and not much in our baptism about that. They should be connected. And you can do that. You write it, you do it, you get your conference on board, and then you get your synod on board. That's how we changed the confession from when I was in the ministry. We started out, we are by nature sinful and unclean. The Bible doesn't say that at all. We got it changed to I have sinned in thought, word, and deed. So you can change the liturgy. The second bit of advice I would give you is if you're doing changes in your liturgy in your home church, don't discuss it in the worship committee. You plan it in the worship committee. You get a little questionnaire of the different parts of the liturgy, and you do approve, disapprove, or tolerate, because liturgy is an experience, not an idea. Some ideas sound fantastic and are flops. Other ideas sound corny and are greatly appreciated. So I get in liturgical dance in one place by doing that, and the foot washing on Holy Thursday. We just did evaluations and planning and implementation in our worship committee, and we got a lot more done that way. So those are the two things. Worship is an experience. let people experience it and react, and don't have your sacraments just in 4 walls. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching this, and thank you very much for your ears and your eyes. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Don Lindman, and I'm very grateful for the fact that the bishop has allowed us to come and talk about our ordination for 50 years, and it was quite an honor, and I appreciate the fact of that. I was ordained in 1971, and I remember going to my first synod convention, and it was in Susquehanna University. And of course, that dates me right there, since we no longer go there, and we never longer call it synod convention. But as I was ordained, I went to Reedsville Lutheran Church, and I served there for 8 years. One of the good things about my ministry there was we were able to increase the church membership, and we were able to build a beautiful education unit onto the church. And during that time, it was interesting because Agnes hit, and that was a very traumatic time for our church as Reedsville got flooded, and we had a house full of guests because we had to evacuate a number of people from their homes, and so we put them up in our house for a couple of days. Also, while there, I was able to help establish and maintain a volunteer hospital ministry at the Lewistown Hospital. It was a good time, and I enjoyed my time there. Then after 8 years, I moved to Ephrata, Pennsylvania, where I became the co-pastor of Trinity Lutheran Church. While there, I served as president of the Ephrata Area Social Services, and also served as a volunteer chaplain in the Ephrata Hospital. It was at that time, after 5 years, I felt a calling for hospital ministry. I attended the program at the Hershey Medical Center. After a year of CPE, I got a job at the Lebanon VA Medical Center and enjoyed my time there for 20 years. While I was in Ephrata, we had the experience of 3 Mile Island, and that was also a very interesting time. So hopefully that doesn't mean my ministry was filled with tragedies, but it was an interesting time. I joined the National Guard as a chaplain in 1975. I served in the National Guard for 12 years, and I joined the Army Reserves, transferred to them, and I became the garrison chaplain at Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was in charge of the ministry team where we interviewed soldiers, because Fort Dix was the in-processing center for National Guard and Reserve troops, and they were mobilized for active duty. I was in the reserves for 28 years. During my time in the reserves, 9/11 happened, and I was mobilized as the garrison chaplain full-time on active duty to deal with the in-processing of the National Guard and the Reserve troops. I had developed a program that our ministry team would interview every soldier that was called up, and we would assess their emotional and their spiritual needs and provide a ministry for them that would help them as they left their families in deployment, and so that they would be better prepared for their time away from home. Because of the ministry of the soldiers, I had the honor of being chosen Military Chaplain of the Year by the Reserve Officers Association, because they felt that what I had done with the soldiers there, and also providing instruction for other chaplains as they were in their different processing centers in the United States, they felt that I would be honored as the Military Chaplain of the Year. Looking back in my ministry, I think I would tell my younger self that it would be necessary to have my devotions the first thing in the morning instead of trying to fit them into my daily schedule. When I finally did that, I realized that my day was much better spiritually, emotionally, because I began the day with my devotions instead of trying to fit them in. I remember at Synod Convention that the 50-year ordinands were honored, and they would go up on stage and talk to them. And I remember talking to my friend next to me. He said, boy, it's really interesting that 50 years, wow, that seems like a long time. And I'm sure they gained a lot of wisdom. And now here I am. And I was right. That was a long time. But it was a good time, and I'm glad I can now reflect back on my 50 years. I'd like to again thank the bishop for the fact that we can be here and talk about our 50 years of ministry. Thank you.